Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Audio Wave Network studios here on the Lower East Side, housed in the Marlowe Stoudemire Wellness Hub, powered by the East Side Community Network and sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation. Now a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the East Side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We drop a new episode every week, so be sure to turn on those notifications. Over the weekend, Southeastern Michigan experienced an extreme amount of consistent rainfall, up to 6 inches in some areas. There are many reports of residents dealing with standing water and sewage in their basements. Families have been recovering from the torrential downpour since Friday and are cleaning out what is left of items that they cannot salvage. Compounded with an overwhelming need for home repair resources in Detroit, we are also returning to the conversation about infrastructure. But today, we are starting with our people, our residents. We are putting residents on record to tell their stories in their own words of their experiences and, quite frankly, the palpable loss that they are feeling right now. Joining us today are JG, who is also our producer, Myrtle Thompson, Tenia Green, Kathryn Douglass. All of you, welcome back to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. Good to be here.
We are happy to have you all, and we're so excited that we are going to have the opportunity to hear from each of you. But before we hear from everybody, we have one fresh off the press story from Donna. Donna, fresh off the press.
This is from the Detroit Free Press, Dana Afana. Mayor Duggan, Governor Whitmer seek federal aid to reimburse Detroiters from flood. So this is an effort right now. I think that there's an effort to have what happened this past weekend declared a disaster, and for the city to demonstrate that you had an extraordinary event, something that is unusual, that does not normally happen, greater than normal rains. I think that I read that is 5.7 inches of rainfall in Detroit this year compared to 4.6 in 2014 when FEMA did declare this area disaster zone. And that was the worst, that was worst FEMA disaster in 2014. Hopefully, we're not going to see worse things happen in Detroit in 2021, but it's certainly 7 years later, more rain and more damage and more water than many people have ever seen. I know that my husband works at the Charles Wright Museum for African American History, and they're closed for weeks because of all of the damage that was done to the museum, which was untouched years ago. So there is a significant issue. Now, what I'm hearing from the city, what I'm hearing from other people is that this is not a result of the city's malfeasance or neglect, that this is a result of global climate change, which apparently we were not well prepared for. And some people have said, well, the power went out. And, right. I understand that's an issue. Some of the pumps weren't working because there was a power failure. But you have to believe that somehow we're going to have sustainable power. Knowing that global climate change is happening and you have these events, are you telling me you don't have backup? Imagine being in a hospital, a whole municipality, all of our systems. And I'm not just going to say the city of Detroit, because the systems across the entire metro area,
energy
the freeways were not pumping. At Grosse Pointe, pumps were not working. It's just, what are we designing and engineering for? We're supposed to be the greatest nation. We're sending people to the moon. And we can't create generators and pumps to stop water from accumulating in heavy rain events. It's not like we had a warning in 2014, did we?
We did have a warning.
So at some point, and when these things happen, everybody says, wow, we need to do something. And then a couple weeks later, we turn the page and we pretend like it's not happening anymore. So we are wet in Detroit. We're burning in Seattle. And it seems as though we have to have something more than a Band-Aid, which I think this request is going to be a Band-Aid unless there's a permanent fix. Now, I'm glad that they are requesting help for Detroit.
Because people need that help.
We need that help.
Absolutely.
And in 2014, Detroiters did not get the level of help we need. A lot of homes never got cleaned up. A lot of, water heaters never got replaced. Some furnaces remained messed up, and we have black mold that stayed in homes because at that time in 2014, I don't know if people realize this, but the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality told FEMA when she came to Michigan to avoid certain neighborhoods in Detroit because they were too dangerous. And so outreach was not conducted. And we have a responsibility, I think all of us who work in community, to make sure that everybody who qualifies knows about the assistance, everybody who qualifies applies for the assistance, and we assist them in documenting their cases so that they get the help they need. Mm-hmm. And that's what ECN is. When you walked in today, those of you who walked into what is now the Stoudemire Wellness Hub, it's under construction, but we are turning our space into a wellness hub. When you walked in, you may have seen some tables in the atrium area. Mm-hmm. Those tables are tables where we're going to let people come in, sign up, and go into our tech hub, which is a computer lab where people are going to be able to go online and sign up for resources. That's another area of concern, is when everything is electronic and you don't have access to the computer and you don't have broadband, that's a problem. If you have access and you have broadband and you're like my mother, Mommy, I love you, and you don't know how to use your stuff, that's another problem.
She gonna get you, but okay.
She is. But
as long as you help me with my stuff, it's okay.
But exactly. And my mother is perfectly fine with me saying this and then helping her, because we've been doing this for a minute. But some people just don't have the computer knowledge or savvy. They have access to resources. And that's what our staff is figuring out. How can we be a resource to our neighbors? And also, there's going to be state emergency relief funds that are made available to help people with quick emergencies. But sometimes those relief funds don't come soon enough. So what we're trying to do is develop a fund that ECN will administer based on some of our grant money we're trying to reprogram, to ensure that we are providing resources to the people in need, in the highest need. If you're looking for food and you can't find it anywhere, if you have a serious issue that needs immediate attention, we don't want people to suffer and go without. And we're so happy to join our partners at MAC Development at 48214 CARES, I think that's what it is, to try to make sure that we are on the ground and providing the kind of resources. But I'm glad, I'm happy that Whitmer and Duggan came together and made this request. We have a friendly ear in President Biden, and I expect positive response. I expect this stuff to happen. We're not dealing with a prior, administration that didn't care about Detroit. But I think that we have to move beyond the immediate fix, the Band-Aid, because some things are lost forever. And we want to talk to you all about what's lost forever. And also what we need to do as a community to ensure that these things don't happen again. Because last year, some of us remember, if you live in the Jeff Chalmers area, certainly you remember the rising sea levels.
Absolutely.
Last year, it wasn't the rain, it was the sea levels that flooded streets. And this happened, for a
Donna
longer
almost
period
broke
of time.
my car.
I almost broke Orlando's car driving down Scripps. I'm serious. And it was the most idiotic thing. I'm driving down Scripps, and I'm like, wow, this water's really getting high. So rather than turning it around, I was like, I hope it doesn't get any higher. Oh. And then the engine stuttered. And I was like, oh, Lord, I broke Orlando's car. What am I going to do? So then it stuttered back to life, and I was able to drive out that puddle, and I thought I was saved. But Orlando's car had a feature. His old car, not his fancy new car. His car had a feature that told you when you were having engine trouble, and it sent him an email and snitched on me.
It snitched on me.
So you had to confess. Yes, I did.
I was like, no, actually, I confessed. And then he said, yeah, I did get that email. So I was like, oh, you're just let me not tell you, right? So that's okay.
But it's it's a real thing. But there's the renewed conversation too around infrastructure in the city, but really around the nation. I mean, look what happened in Miami. There's still a search happening in Miami for people who are still lost in all of that rubble. I mean, the building just collapsed. And so, Donna, I think you're absolutely right when you talk about looking beyond the Band-Aid that's going to help people right now. And a lot of people need that Band-Aid. But what is the sustainability agenda and investment plan moving forward in the nation, and especially here in the city?
Well, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about what we think the city needs to do. But before we go any further into these conversations, but I want to go back to Scripps, right, with the flooding water, only because I was driving, Orlando's relatively new car that had the kind of technology that could snitch on me. There were people living in homes who did not have cars like that, who could not drive out of their driveways, who could not walk out of their driveways because of the high sea levels. That was a human disaster last year, and nobody applied for anything for anybody. You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
I don't have my years right. It was 2 years ago that we had that disaster. But I think it's important that we consider the fact that some people have been living with that. And I remember even that year, you were having in a lot next to you, Myrtle, you were having the water coming up in that lot next to you where your farm stand is.
Right.
And there was like, is there any end in sight? So these problems emerge in a crisis level this year that have been problems prior to this year. So I'm going to stop, and I really want to invite you all to talk about your experiences. Myrtle, I already talked a little bit about yours. Can you start and just share what happened to you? You were the first person I saw on Facebook
giving
like
us
5 in the
updates.
morning, giving us updates. I had no idea what happened until I read your Facebook post.
Yeah.
Well, I went to bed. I think it was raining when I fell asleep, and I got a phone call from my neighbor. And she said, "Are you asleep?" I said, "Yeah, what's happening?" She said, "Go look outside." And I said, "What's going on?" I'm, waking up, stumbling through the dining room because she's got me worked up a little bit. And she said, "Girl, we're in trouble." I look out my dining room window, and I see shiny, reflective, wavy looking, what is... And I go to the front, and I look outside, and I just scream. And I said, "Jesus, what is this?" There's water everywhere. It's at my second stair. My car is covered in water. My neighbors.
Your car completely covered?
It came up to the hood.
Wow.
And it reminded me, it was immediately reminded me of the first flood, but it was way beyond that because it was as far as I could see down Manistee. Manistee is about a mile long. As far as I could see. And I went upstairs and I called my son. I told him. And he woke up and he was like, "What?" And I looked out of his window because he's up higher. And I see Ashland is devastated. And as far as I can see, it's just water. It stopped because on the west side of the street, it must be higher. There's a dog that lives outside. He was dry, but he was like yapping. My husband woke up and we were out there, and I remembered I had some important papers in my car, and I slapped my forehead, and I'm telling you, standing on my porch and looking out, I felt what those people in Katrina must have felt like on a small scale. I felt it because they were on rooftops. But I could see some land, but it was way over there. Across the way. And I'll tell you, I kept looking. My neighbor was yelling across the street. He said, the orange dam. It looked like the orange dam is busted. And I said, the Tiger Dam. And I'm looking towards where it is, and I'm seeing this orange thing near the sidewalk. Now, the Tiger Dam should be back by the canal, maybe 100 feet back. But it's dark and it's reflective. You can't really see it. And it started raining again. And I said, "Is that something orange?" I wasn't trusting my own eyes because the Tiger Dam should not be at the front of the street. It just should not be. And so I sat on the porch. I started going on Facebook and letting folks know. I started calling my neighbors who I had numbers. I didn't see them outside. And I called my daughter and the community space. I had called my one daughter. I called my other daughter. My other daughter's car is totally submerged in water, and she lived on East Lawn. Totally submerged.
Just a few blocks over.
Just a few blocks over, and there's a park near her. So I'm thinking, how much water is there really? How much? It felt like maybe we were in a bathtub or something. And so the house, the 291 house, the water came up, but that house has been, the foundation and the waterproofing and everything, a little came up and it went down. And my daughter had water. She couldn't find her drain. Come to find out her house doesn't have a drain. in the basement. So she had to get a pump, but the streets were covered and there was water standing the next day. I'm a gardener. We have the Freedom Garden. We've never had the flood hit the garden, ever. It would go around. It would follow the path of the concrete, the alley, the driveway, the street. It will hit the front up by the sidewalk. My garden is devastated.
Oh, my gosh.
All those beautiful collard greens, can't eat them. All those beets, can't eat them. Anything that's leafy, it's got to go. I don't know. We planted 16 watermelon plants. I don't know if we'll be able to salvage any of it. The beehive survived. They did, topple over, but they survived. The only thing that, since that happened, I've been in a daze because I just replaced 2 furnaces because I live in a 2-family flat. I just replaced a hot water tank this past season. We're coming off of COVID, and I just felt like sitting down on the floor, crossing my legs and not moving. That's how I felt. And the people who know me were looking at me and making sure I was okay because I don't get despondent too often. It's got to be something serious, but I felt helpless. I didn't trust. My trust was broken. We've had water. We've had rain, but not like that. So I went to the meeting last night, and yes, they do open up the sewers into the canal to catch the overflow. Well, when that water bust through that dam, all of that contaminated everything. Everything.
When you say they, you're talking about
Detroit Water and Sewage.
Detroit Water and Sewage. It's not Grosse Pointe releasing into Detroit.
Well, the person who was speaking was from Detroit Water and Sewage.
Right. I know that one of the concerns has been that. I have a couple of questions, and then I want to move on and get some more stories. But one of the questions I have is about the Tiger Dams, because, the Tiger Dams were supposed to be a stopgap solution.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be permanent.
Address the flooding. But it seems to me as though the seawall is the permanent option we need for a community with a canal community. What do you think? Do you think that we need to build up the seawalls, and who should pay for that?
Of course, we need to build. The city needs to put seawalls in. The city needs to. The Tiger Dams are hideous. They didn't work. They don't work. It cost $2 million for what?
Right. And they're ugly.
And so,
that's what I'm saying. They're very unsightly.
And so, and then, when I look at, and I want to quickly pivot because I want to make sure we hear from everybody, but when the issue of Jeff Chalmers being a floodplain got introduced, one of the things people said is, why can't we do what they did in Grosse Pointe Park? And what the response was, well, it's really expensive to do that.
Can you tell folks what they did in Grosse Pointe
Park?
They
built seawalls in Grosse Pointe Park, and the seawalls that they built caused FEMA to reverse its decision, and it was removed as being a floodplain, right? And so many residents of Jeff Chalmers said, why can't we do the same thing in the Jeff Chalmers community? Well, first of all, there were meetings that we went to. I went to a meeting, and I have no idea. Well, no questions were allowed. It was just being talked. We were talked at. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was there, and all of these people were introduced, but nobody spoke except for the insurance person trying to sell FEMA flood insurance to residents in the community. And then it was kind of taken offline that it's too expensive. It would be millions of dollars to build a seawall all through the canal communities. So my question is this: how do you generate $250 million in bond financing, and this is not a top priority?
Exactly.
That's one question.
Or we got
the second question
million.
is, now we have Penske in the community, and you're spending it building up a park. How do you prioritize building up AB Ford Park over a seawall in the community that continues to flood? It seems to me as though until there's a commitment to do something like building that seawall, getting rid of the Tiger Dams, and creating a sustainable solution, we're going to be revisiting this problem in the future. Because if you had a seawall there, I wonder if the level of flooding you experienced on your street and we experienced all through Jeff Chalmers would have happened.
I don't think so.
And I wonder if we were able to go back, what would the priorities of this federal relief aid package that City Council just approved today, that Detroit is getting $880 some odd million in federal aid, what those priorities will look like or say after the rain event over the weekend?
So they should be funneled into infrastructure at this point.
I'm sure a lot of people are saying that.
They should absolutely be funneled into infrastructure. We have to acknowledge you can't use climate change as an excuse anymore. You can't say, well, this is not negligence, it's climate change. Like climate change is a surprise. We've known about global climate change for so long. At some point, we should be designing our city to adapt to global climate change as opposed to being shocked and saying, well, it's not my bad, we didn't do it, it's the climate that did it. And at some point, lives are going to be cost as a result of this. So I think that this is a policy issue that our climate equity folks are going to be working on to really push even more strongly for some of those changes. Mm-hmm. But Jeff Chalmers is not the only neighborhood that was impacted. Now, I'm sorry, Tenia? Tenia. Okay, Tenia. Where do you live?
On Algonquin.
Oh, okay. So you're still in the Jeff Chalmers community.
Yes. My parents moved on Algonquin in 1952.
Oh, wow.
And I was born in 1960. Mm-hmm. Out of all the years, we have had floods, maybe to the baseboard, maybe, to this white panel here, but nothing to that extreme. I have a son that's doing dialysis at home. Oh. My daughter woke me up and said, Mama, go look down them steps. When I looked down those steps, my anxiety level was so freaking high. I went outside. I said, well, first thing I thought, I'm going to jump in my car and go to my daughter's house. I couldn't even get out my driveway. The water, you could swim in that water. That's how high it was. And it was so heavy that you could see logs, like the tree stumps that a neighbor cut us up some logs to sit, because I got a side lock. A side lock, and we got to kind of decorate it. Push those heavy logs all the way down there by Essex. I say, how am I gonna get out of here? Thought about it, I said, well, I'm gonna drive down the sidewalk. I looked down the street at Fruit in Algonquin. The water was coming out the main drains.
From sewer hoses.
Up in the air.
Yeah.
Like, I said, this world is coming to an end. I was so frightened. It had pushed my refrigerator over on the ground. I didn't know how heavy water could be. I'm thinking, when you swimming, I'm thinking water's light and, flowy. That water carried a lot of weight. And it was pushing things around, moving things out the way. I've heard dogs being drowned, cats being drowned. And my son at that particular time, I say, just stay on the machine, because he does it at home. I say, stay on the machine, and I'll let you know if we gotta get out of here. But I'm thinking, how are we gonna get out when the water was coming up out of, it was like something in a horror movie. I've been there since I was a kid, and I've never seen anything in that impact. I said, what is happening. And you know what? Another thing. I used to say when I was a kid, I say, when I get grown, I'm ready to move away from over here because of the flood. I mean, every time it rained, it would, your basement would get messed up. And then I forgot about that, because after my mom died, I moved back into my family home. But that particular day, I said, I know why I don't want to stay down here anymore, because of these floods. I had a boot collection, wash machine, and dryer, hot water tank. My son needs hot water. I can't wait on FEMA. I had to go out and spend $700 on a water tank. And I had the water had damaged some of the wiring. We had to rewire where the hot water tank had to go because the water damage had did. I was just so devastating. I know I don't want to, I'm so sensitive, but that took me back. So I remember why I don't want to stay down here by this water. They won't fix that area, and I don't know why.
We need to fight for that, though, right?
Right.
We need to fight for that, and we need your stories, because as bad as the pictures are, honestly, I wasn't there in that. And just hearing your stories about the way that you feel and the way that you felt and the fear and the anxiety and the short-term impact on your son's health, the fact that you were able to purchase that water heater for him. What if you couldn't have? What if you didn't know how to do the wiring? What if you didn't have access to that? These are irreversible things. Nobody's going to ever give you that peace of mind back.
Yeah.
That's trauma.
Thank God for a brother that went to school, got a good education.
Right.
Good education, and is willing and able to help his sisters in need.
Wow.
But this is for everybody who does not have that brother.
Yeah.
I feel so bad.
Everybody who does not have that person. When we talk about climate crisis and climate health, this is a direct impact. I see two significant things here, and just looking in your eyes, I'm not a crier, but I want you to know I feel like crying just listening to your stories, because it's the kind of thing that doesn't make it into the newspapers. And I'm so glad that you are sharing this so that people can hear from you that this is more than an inconvenience and broken appliances. This is more than, having to clean something out. This is really fear for your life and fear for your child, which is sometimes even worse than fear for yourself. Myrtle trying to figure out, how can I get to my child? You trying to figure out, how can you get... Kathryn, the French Connection. You're over there. Your block club has the absolute coolest name of any block club in the city of Detroit, the French Connection.
French Connection.
Where is that located?
We're on French Road. French Road runs north of Mack Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
My parents purchased that home in 1946.
Ooh.
Okay, the home is historic. It is 100 years old. The home was always a place for family and refuge, and all growing up, all my whole life, that's what I remember.
Make sure you're talking in the mic, Kathryn.
But I also remember that there's always been floods and things that came through the sewer system, and then they would tell us that, oh no, it's your home, it's this. The infrastructure leading out of the house, we recently redid it. I mean, at a large cost.
Yep.
The floods never stopped. They never stopped. And my biggest fear is that the pollution that comes through back in through the wall, the sewage waste, and wanting to sustain that home. That's my dream, to keep that home so that it can remain a refuge for my children's children. They come over, they hang out. I have 2 lots next to the house. We've really invested in making the lot sustainable, doing something important. And though my stories are not quite as deep as yours, my heartbreak is just as deep. Because again, we had to load up. And my daughter and those came over. I was just so overwhelmed. They said, Mama, we're just gonna come and do it. They came and started loading up things. And I had already begun to crate things and put them in storages. So I did not have to use my basement area. My husband came up. He says, it's flooding. I said, well, do you see the water? He said, no, I don't see the water. I went down and everything. It looked like little monsters had been there. Everything was thrown over, tipped over, you know. And I paid a lot of resources to have it neatly stacked. Let's put it in order. We're not going to experience what we did before. But it was all over the floor. It was all over everywhere. So I feel your pain, but I think as a community, we certainly have to continue to help each other. I didn't really think about sustainability and those kind of things till a few years ago. I really didn't think about it. But then I said, no, this is not right. For people to live in a city as progressive as the one that we have, and we have all of these issues. So I became that advocate, walking the block, checking on my neighbors, calling them. A neighbor called when the power went out right before we came in. He says, what else can happen? I said, well, we could lose our roof. And he says, well, I knew you would say that. I don't even know why I talked to you. Because in all of this that is so despairing, it is very despairing. My granddaughter was sitting in the floor trying to dry out pictures. She says, who is Mary Beale? I said, that's my mother. And then if I hadn't known that those were the pictures that she was going through and things, I would not have the impact that I had coming here. So I was getting ready. I said, let me get on over here. I got my story to tell. That we have to stand up. The city has to help us. But no, we can't get flood insurance. It's not on my rider. We have to buy all these expensive extras. But I am getting a sump pump. I am going to get a generator. I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe I'll get me a job somewhere. And I'll be able to get those things. I consider all of those blessings. I really do. Because sometimes you don't know how you're going to do things. You don't know how it's going to come to be. My husband, he's 70. I'm close behind him. We're old folks, but we got a great spirit.
It's really, what you're saying is really eye-opening. You said the word disparate, and I want to just talk about that for a little bit. And sometimes how long it takes for resources to come in marginalized communities or Black and brown communities when disasters like this happen. Only because, like, I think about Katrina, how long it took President Bush to get down to Katrina and see what was happening and to get, resources. And then you have the sentiment that we heard yesterday around, this is a climate disaster. And it takes so much poking and prodding to get the resources and to even name what happened and name the wrong when we're talking about Black communities and the trauma and the palpable loss that all of you are feeling now. It is infuriating. It really is infuriating to hear that you had your granddaughter on the floor trying to dry out photographs. That's something that you can never get of your mom who purchased the house in the 1940s. There is a physical impact. There is a physical result, but there is also a psychological imprint that we are dealing with here that we have to name and acknowledge.
Right. And, I think that just to go back to a point that Tenia made earlier, and I think it's a theme right now, it's that we're not talking about communities that were well maintained or equitably maintained. We're talking about communities that were neglected in a neglected state and therefore vulnerable to all of these climate disasters. We're talking about people being told, as Kathryn mentioned, that the reason you're having sewage backing up into your house is because of something happening on your property line. And that makes it your responsibility. And so Kathryn had the resources to fix what's on her property line, but those resources did not fix the problem, because really what the city is able to do is say, I'm not responsible for what happens to you,
Exactly.
because this is your property line. And, you know, it goes back to the whole thing around the idea of a seawall, that a homeowner should have to pay for a seawall, that the city is not responsible for a seawall, or the homeowner should fix infrastructure underneath their house, that the city is not responsible for infrastructure. We're putting infrastructure repairs and infrastructure demands on people who earn on average less than half the median income of the area at large. So why is it that we would expect that to happen? And what happens to those people who cannot afford to stop and pay to stop sewage from coming into their homes? Where does the line between public responsibility and private responsibility, where is it drawn? Now, JG is playing two roles today. He is he's our technician, our producer. I don't know what you call that.
Engineer.
Yep, okay, thank you. He's engineering our show, but because we're back in the studio. And by the way, disclaimer, Kathryn Douglass is now part of the ECN team, so she has that job to afford some of those things, and we're really looking forward to that. But JG is also here as a new resident of Detroit.
So just moving back, me and my wife recently purchased a home in East English Village. I grew up in Jeff Chalmers, so I grew up over there. Went to Remus Robinson. Like I'm from the neighborhood, but we were on vacation this past week. Got back Sunday, so you know, coming home, and like immediately I knew there's like, I see my neighbor kind of dragging stuff to the yard, and it's just like I already had a feeling that okay, something is probably going to be wrong. So. Just going into the house, and we moved in October, so you know when you're moving process, you like certain boxes you put in the basement. Like, just gonna put this box in the basement. We'll go through it later. You know, we're cleaning stuff out. I had some work being done on my garage, so a lot of stuff in the garage was in the basement. And I went home, immediately went down the stairs, and the second stair was just, you just heard it, like the water was just. It was still, it was, the basement was essentially dry, but you seen all the like sewage there, and it was just immediately bags still at the back door. Just let's get to work. Let's start, you know, taking this stuff out, and still a process. Today is Tuesday, so it's still a process of just still cleaning it out, and it's still working. And I went to go had to go make a delivery to the post office. And I just so happened to ride around like Grosse Pointe to see. And all I was seeing was all these restorative trucks. Like every house
Those green ones?
literally had a restorative. It was any company. It was just like all of the restoration companies were all in Grosse Pointe. And then when I get back to our side of Mac, it's just, you don't see any. You don't see any at all. So it's just like the disparaging wealth gap to be able to have somebody fix it for you, as opposed to, you know, everyone in my neighborhood was, hey, you need fans, you need this, you need a wheelbarrow to you know, take stuff back and forth. And it's just like, to just see like, you know, white women out there sipping their coffee, and just it was literally like, it was still the same devastation, but I know it's a little bit different when you can just relax and have somebody take care of it for you, and you don't really have to go through the things. It's like, you don't have to go through pictures. You don't have to, you know, say like, okay, can I keep this? Does it have to go type of, you know, energy? Or it's like, I have a cousin who master bedroom was in the basement, and, you know, he doesn't have any clothes anymore. You know, it's just like, and he doesn't have the disposable income to be like, I'll be okay, or I don't have to worry about this. It's like, hey, like, he needs help. So, you know, he can't wait on insurance to replace all of his shoes or all of his clothes. It's like, he needs help now, and it's just unfortunate.
Well, please, if anybody knows of anybody who needs help now, please have them call our offices at 1313-571-2800. Please have them call our offices. We are trying to help as many people as we can. Because we want to be a resource to people in the community. I happened to be, went on a bike ride, I guess, on Sunday morning with my husband. We ride bikes Sunday morning trying to, maintain some kind of health. And we rode through Jeff Chalmers around, and we saw a lot of stuff out there. And then we rode into Grosse Pointe Park. And I really wanted to be in the furniture restoration business because the stuff they were throwing away, I was like, Lordy, look at that chair, look at that sofa. I mean,
it was a lot.
Listen,
like, it was a lot of stuff that was just.
I'm not joking. Listen, if anybody has the skills to clean stuff, there's some stuff. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Clean it, sell it, keep it, whatever it is. Because I also thought about the fact that we are a disposable society, and we throw things out because they become inconvenient. Some people, some stuff is ruined, but I was like, I don't even see any dirt on here. This looks perfectly clean. It's a yellow chair, and it's still yellow. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that it didn't have to go. I'm not saying there's not mold or mildew, but I also thought about just the condition of what I saw on people's lawns in Grosse Pointe Park and compared that to what I saw in the bulk pickup in the city of Detroit. The gap was there. And I also talked to a number of people who are trying to hire companies to come and do cleanup, and you can't get them. They're all...
It's also big bank. Like, it's like, how much money can I pull you out of this job in Grosse Pointe to come do my house? And it's just like the city. I was talking to my aunt. She lives on Drexel, right off of Jeff Chalmers area, and she was saying like she can't get any companies, and they're asking like, well, we can come, but if you want us to come immediately, it's this price, and it's just like the price gouging is outrageous too right now.
So if there are people, we know these are opportunities, right? We know this is not, unfortunately, the last time somebody's going to need this. Hopefully, it's the last time it's going to be needed at this scale. But I think of the need for us to have people who prioritize our communities, who are not price gouging, and who say, let's figure out how to clean up. It's everything we need, whether it's a handyman coming to your house, somebody working to do landscaping. We always have a harder time finding skilled trades to come into our communities and do this kind of work. And we don't even know how to get into the business. So I'm really interested in figuring out, as we look at environmental green jobs, what is the job necessary for this so that people are not on their own having to either spend thousands of dollars they don't have or having to do all of the work themselves, because not everybody has the physical capability of doing the work. You have seniors who don't have anybody to clean for them, and it's like a question for ECN. Are there teams of people that we can help send out to help people, assist people with cleanup, so that, even if it's a business, it's a nonprofit business, we've got to do a better job taking care of our own.
Yeah. I have a closing question. I know we're getting ready to wrap up. I want to talk about urgency, right? We know that there is so many things that have to be done. And I'll start with Ms. Myrtle. Myrtle, what's urgent right now?
Oh, Orlando, that's a question that, if I just have to say one thing, and that is coming to grips with what does this climate crisis really mean for us, as how do we live and go forward? What do we need to put in place? We have technology that can send people to the moon. We can have technology that can make our lives so much better, so much more simple, but we have to come together and unite around this environmental, that this is the thing, this is our earth, this is our planet. This is the one thing we all cannot live without. Air, water, we need those things. We don't need them trashed. We don't need, we need to be able to breathe. We need to have clean food. And putting a cherry on top of a banana, I want to say something else. I want to call it ice cream something else. We can't keep putting the cherry on top of this mess. It is not for our own mentality, our own mental health, and our physical health. We have to understand what living in a system that has been almost poisoned to death. what is it doing to us, and what are we doing for it? So the environmental crisis is urgent.
Tenia, what's urgent?
What's urgent for me is that as a race of black people, we got to learn how to pull each other together. And what I mean by that is my son is not able to go down. He wasn't able to go down there and help to clean that mess.
That's right.
I put my gym shoes on. I walked up and down Algonquin, finding help. I need help to do this. Can you recommend somebody to do this? I got this so much amount of money. I don't have a whole lot, but the waste, the stuff that was coming from the sewage, he cannot. That dialysis, is such a touchy subject. Certain things can't touch this when he's going into dialysis. He can't inhale certain fumes. Everything has to be clean. So I can sit down and say, well, we gotta figure out something. No, the next day I put on my walking shoes and I walked up and down the Algonquin. If you know somebody that want to make a couple dollars, we need help. I need to get this stuff out of my basement. I need to get my basement washed down, cleaned. He cannot smell these fumes. So what I'm saying to you is, as a help, let's learn how to help one another.
Yeah.
You see that we don't have control over the water system, what goes on with these big machines and everything, but we do have control over helping my sister, helping my brother.
That's right. To be a neighborhood.
To
help each
to
other.
love one another.
Yeah.
It goes back to say, love thy neighbor as
Yourself.
you love yourself. So let's stop being so standoffish. I ain't going down. I don't feel like pulling no trash today. Ain't doing nothing.
Don't want to do nothing.
Sitting around. Don't want to help your neighbor.
See, but we have to help them to understand and recall. They may not have ever had the experience of knowing what a neighbor is. They see Miss Kathy coming.
Or maybe
talking
they've
about,
had the experience of their own flood, but it doesn't look like what we experienced, because people carry a lot of trauma.
They do.
Yes, we
A
do.
lot of trauma.
They
We've
do.
been broken and beaten on so many levels.
But we
Yeah.
have
Of
to
violence.
fix it.
But
we
it's-
have to fix it.
but
We
can-
have to fix the wall. We have to fix the infrastructure. We have to help the families. We have to train our children, our children's children. We're talking about STEM work. We're talking about electricians. We're talking about young men who know how to take care of grass. We have to teach them that.
We have intergenerational trauma. Let's
We
be
do.
honest, okay? And that's my love for the concept of post-traumatic slavery syndrome is that we have had trauma since we were enslaved, freed, held in sharecropping farms, beaten, mistreated, and some of that trauma is much more recent than that. People need to heal. And I think we need to give each other grace. I think when you walk up and down those streets and you do that thing, you bring people in
You
and you
allow
show
people.
them a way. And then you demonstrate to them a way to be, right? And we all have our roles. So I think it starts with showing love. I think love is the thing that's missing. Sometimes I think there's a lot of love in this room. I know
Being tender.
loving
Tender.
people in this room. I met Kathryn, and we had a conversation. We talked for some time, and I was like, okay, so do you want a job? And she did. She did. I was like so moved by her story and how she loved her neighbors, literally loved her neighbors, right? And of course, I've seen Myrtle do it, and I'm so happy to meet you, Tenia, and just see how you love your neighbor and love your son. So I think that's a big thing. Do what you can. I think that part of it is also making sure that we do change the things that we can. And we can make change in policy when we stand together. I don't give up on that. we've got to help each other now and make demands also, because I believe if those tiger dams had not been there, we would not have seen what we saw. We want to make sure that we use this moment to make a new demand on the city, that we want seawalls, right?
Yep.
Yes.
And to make new demands on the city. You are talking to President Biden about infrastructure. Let's stop putting the burden on people to fix the sewage lines in their homes, and let's redo the sewer lines in the city. Come up with a plan for that.
Donna, if they said that the climate crisis is the first line I heard was it's the climate. Okay, well then that should put the logic into something that's going to be there, a structure. Those seawalls need to be there. Right. The tiger dams don't even want to be there. It moved.
Right.
It doesn't want to be there.
So Kathryn, you have the last word, I think. What is most urgent for you?
The sense of neighborhood and community. That's where the healing is. Mm-hmm. My parents were right after slavery. You know, they sharecroppers coming from the South to a better place in Detroit. To be able to purchase that home on French Road is a part of the black story. That then raise your children and don't let them talk about the discrimination and that old such and such person over there. No, they had a name. Those are the values that were instilled in me. So I've instilled them into my children and my grandchildren. We can't stop because they're not going to treat us right. They've never treated us right.
That's right.
I've been spit on. I can remember being spit on as a child walking to the 5 and 10 store on St. Jean and Mac. Spit on by a person who didn't like the color of my skin because I was a little black child. Walking happy, going to get me a hula hoop at the 5 and 10 cent store. I never told my father that story because I knew that it would have created something much more tragic. In my heart, I already knew I couldn't tell my father that story. So we have to instill that love, practice it, walk it. I'm not just talking. I'm walking the French Connection.
All right.
Well, we want to thank Myrtle, Tenia, and Kathryn for joining us today. Donna and I felt a real palpable sense to make sure that we put residents on record and to make sure that this message gets cascaded on all platforms. So thank you all for being so transparent. Thank you, JG, for your transparency and in sharing your stories. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Once again, the number to Eastside Community Network, where folks will be here to help you file a claim with the city, among other things, is area code 313-571-2800. That's area code 313-571-2800. Pick up the phone, call, or give that number to your neighbor so that they can call and get the help that they need. Once again, we thank you so much for listening, and we want you to catch the wave.